Hello and welcome back to Good Game Nation, where we bring you all things TCG. My name is Preston, and today we're doing the news. And it started off as a really slow week, and we really just took off. I think it was like Saturday morning at like 4 a.m. here. There was just a ton of tweets of cards that they released all at once, which is great for content, but really bad for my sleep. But first, let's jump into the website to show what exactly we're going to be talking about. And what exactly are we talking about this week? Mostly the new starter decks. There's going to be 6 of them. And not only are there 6 of them, but they all have to come out with all of their cards within the release date, which in Japan is the 13th. So, of next month. So they got a lot of time. But they announced all of these at some point a little while ago. So we know the leaders, and I believe we know that all the leaders are reprints too. I think that is true. But if we get down here, we get down to the rarity breakdown, which was super interesting to see because it's not super consistent. Because I believe this is a true reprint thing that's going to happen, where some of the cards aren't going to be new. And I think that gets given away with green saying that there's 6 promo cards. Promo cards is a really weird rarity that you wouldn't see normally like this. So in green, at least 6 of the cards are going to be reprints. And we already saw that with the Uta starter deck the first time it came around. Which was almost entirely reprints of the film stuff from set 2. So there's different rarity breakdowns. Pause the video, or you can also look at the link in the description just to look at it yourself. It's really interesting breakdowns, and doesn't match the normal form where it's like certain amount of super rares and then it breaks down normally. I believe most starter decks are exactly the same in that matter. So up to this point, usually it's 2 super rares. Now we're getting 3 in some of these. I guess just green gets a 3rd one. Must have been really important to drop that extra one in there. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see what exactly is coming out of each of these. And speaking of what's coming out of each of these, we'll jump into it right after this ulti. This is the next promo card that's going to be included in either flagship tournaments or local tournaments in general in Japan. So this ulti will be showing up shortly in Japan, and then probably months down the road we'll get it included in either a tournament pack or something like that. Ulti, purple character, 6 cost, 6k power, Animal Kingdom Pirates, 1k counter. Up to once per turn, when 2 or more of your Dawn are returned to your Dawn deck, add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck rested. Then set up to one of your purple stages as active. It's really interesting. It has inherent ramp in itself, so the concept of getting Dawn back when you minus your Dawn is really nice. We've seen it with Pudding. We saw it first with Kid. I think there might also be some Heart Pirates that do it. I'm not sure exactly. But regaining Dawn on a minus is really nice. It gets rid of that potential actual cost entirely, which is good. And then resetting your stage as active is pretty cool. When you're thinking about purple, that means possibly getting another activation of Onigashima, which at this point may or not be super necessary with Black Maria being a thing. All other ramp really is tough to talk about when Black Maria gives you 5 in the end game. So this is a good attacker, decent cost, decent power, really good effect, honestly, in my opinion. Being able to get potentially 2 Dawn back when you minus 2. Plus, if you have even one other, like Eustace or Pudding, you're gaining Dawn at that point, which is super interesting, I think. But it really depends on where the meta is, and this card could have too high of a cost for what it does when you want to be doing other things with that Dawn during that turn. Even at the end game, you might not care about the ramp because, again, Black Maria is cheaper and will get you more Dawn and has less conditions and everything. And you're going to be wanting to playing bigger, more effective like KO stuff during the end games and stuff like that. So it's potentially not super exciting, but also it has a really cool effect. So I could see people splashing it in for some reason or another. Okay, now we're on to our first starter deck card. Portuguese Ace, red character, 5 cost, 6k power, Whitebeard Pirates, 1k counter. If your leader has Whitebeard Pirates included in its type, this character has Rush. Once per turn, if this character would be removed from play by one of your opponent's effects, instead you may give this character minus 2000 power for this turn. That's cool. Gaining Rush off of the 2 leaders that it, 3 leaders it could be in. It could be an Ace, it can be in Marco, and it can be in Edward Newgate itself. So a 5 cost 6k Rush in any of those decks is not a bad thing. That means, it doesn't have as good effects as our other 5 cost 6k Rush, which I believe is just Luffy from the original starter deck, because it doesn't gain unblockable. But if you have one less miss in your deck and you don't have to play that Luffy, that could be a payoff. Where you get a little bit more consistent because you have more Whitebeard Pirates that you can play that generally are going to do the same thing. At the end game, honestly, the unblockable might be more important than not being able to KO it, but still a searchable in type card that you can play for Whitebeard Pirates. So in general, like it. I think it will most likely replace the Luffy unless that unblockable trait really is important, which honestly is quite better. So it might not matter, but just even if it is in addition to that Luffy, where you could play some of these instead, or in addition to, you're gaining another rusher in red that you didn't have before. And I think Rush is always going to be attractive because it's a surprise. Your opponent sees what's on board, and in red you're always going to have to assume that they could have a Rush card, so you can't use all your resources just in case, which means you're playing suboptimally and not countering out because you're always worried about that Rush card. It's always a threat, and I think that's super good for red to have. Almost everyone has a Rush card at this point, but anyways, moving on to Atmos. Atmos, red character, 4 cost 5k power, Whitebeard Pirates, 1k counter. When attacking, if your leader is Edward Newgate, you cannot add life to your hand using your own effects during this turn. I think there's been a ton of stuff like this and it just doesn't get played. Generally, when you're playing Whitebeard, you don't really care if you're losing that life because you're just going in and that's extra resources. It's an extra card draw. So I don't think a lot of the cards that did that got played even at the peak of Whitebeard. I think we just went straight power and aggro so that when you did lose life, it didn't really matter. Yeah, so I don't see this card most likely not being. I don't think this card gets played. I think there's better options, and we don't really care about that life loss. We would rather have effects that are doing something than effects that are keeping us up, because Whitebeard just wants to go hard. And yeah, I don't think it matters. So we'll move on. Gordon, green character, 2 cost 0 power, film, 1k counter, blocker. On your opponent's attack, you may trash any number of music type cards from your hand. Your leader or one of your characters gain plus 1000 power during this battle for every card trashed. It's an interesting effect. The ace leader has this inherently in his effect, so it can't be terrible. I just feel like when you have, I guess it could be characters without counter, that would be helpful. I don't know all of the music cards, but I feel like most of them were event cards already, so you probably have better value out of them as their event card. But maybe a lot of the starter deck stuff that's coming is going to be music, and that makes it a little bit more attractive. 2 cost 0k blocker also is super easily removed if needed, so it's not a super great card in my opinion. I think there's better options in the film package that you could use instead. Moving on to our next one. One of the super rares for the green starter deck. Shanks, green character, 9 cost 11,000 power. Film for Emperor's Red Hair Pirates. On play, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters. Yeah, it's a big, strong character at a high cost. And I think they do this with Shanks all the time. And I think they just don't know how to design for Shanks at this point because it's very little effects for a 9 cost. When you think about any other card at this like power level, I feel like they're a lot more effective than KOing up to one of your opponent's rested characters. I had to jump over to card dev real quick just to look at other 9 costs. I looked at 9 and 10s, but 10s are ridiculous half the time, so just in 9 cost, honestly, even the original Shanks is slightly better than this, even though the power is lower. Yamato's incredible for 9 cost. Kaido, I feel like, was still being played recently, or even might be coming back with the new purple stuff. Sanji's ridiculous. You have a triple attack at 9 cost. Freaking Edward Newgate is a 9 cost. And then you have Shanks, which is KO 1 card. So I just feel like they aren't designing Shankses very well. I mean, they're always strong. We've never gotten a weak one, but their effects just aren't interesting to me and aren't really good most of the time. So most of the time, I think the one red Shanks is the newer one. It's not even a 9 cost, so might be a 10. But yeah, let's move on to Boa. Boa Hancock, blue character, 4 cost, 6k power, 7 Warlords of the Sea, Kuja Pirates, blocker. On play, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, then place them in any order on the top or bottom of your deck. Then give up to one of your 7 Warlords of the Sea type leaders or characters 1 Rested Dawn. So, on play, peep, and if you peep, give a Rested Dawn. So you're going to have 4 Rested Dawn from playing her. So you'll always be able to activate that as long as you have cards in your deck to look at. And she has blocker. I think it's a pretty good card. I mean, 7 Warlords of the Sea want to, if you're playing the Dofi leader, you want to set up cards to be able to play off of the Dofi's effect. So rearranging the top of your deck is beneficial for that archetype. And then the ability to add Rested Dawn to your characters is going to be always a good thing, I feel like. You're using a resource that you've already activated. It's pretty much useless unless you have an effect like this to use, or a minus Dawn effect. So I feel like this is good. I feel like having decent powered blockers is good. I know Dofi has been coming back into popularity recently, and I don't know what the build is off of the top of my head, so I'm not sure if this fits into that build, but it could. I mean, the new stuff that's coming out of the starter deck could be a different type of resurgence for that leader, and I think the card's generally pretty good, and if you're playing Dofi, it should have a spot, but maybe it's more aggressive and faster now, and it doesn't need to wait till this turn to play stuff like this. Not exactly sure. Yeah, I think it's a good card. I hope it gets played. I could see it being played just because it does quite a few things that are advantageous. Having an on-play effect that sets up your leader, being able to use a resource that is untouchable normally with the Rested Dawn, and then also being a blocker on top of that, feels like it has more things than the Shanks did at 9 cost. Moving on to Crocodile. Crocodile, blue character, 4 cost, 5k power, 7 Warlords of the Sea, Baroque Works, 1k counter. On play, reveal one card from the top of your deck. If that card has 7 Warlords of the Sea type, draw 2 cards and place 1 card from your hand on the top of your deck. Okay, so reveal a card from the top of your deck, then draw 2 cards. So I'm assuming you draw the card that you revealed and 1, and then you can place a card back to the top of your deck on play. Yeah, this type of thing is super interesting to me because I love to think about mechanics and game knowledge. If you're able to do stuff, like I think I talked about it with the blue Whitebeard Pirates, if you're able to reveal the same card over and over again, and that's effective for you, or you're able to only show them one thing. So the game knowledge they got is you have a Perona in hand, and then you put the Perona back and you reveal Perona again. It obviously doesn't work for this because it has to be 7 Warlords. So bad example, but generally, if you're able to reveal the same card with all of your effects, then you have an advantage of gaining a card from your hand because you're going to draw 2 and then place 1 that you could still be gaining and plussing off of your effects without giving your opponent more information. If you're not able to cycle and do stuff, then they know you have Perona and Weevil and whatever else you're revealing to get your effects off. And they know what's in your hand, and that way they can play better around what you have. And that's not great for you generally if they know, oh, they've revealed 4 counter cards and they haven't put them on the board. They have 4K counter in hand. I need to play this way. Not a great thing for you to be playing against when they have more knowledge than you. So if you're able to abuse it, that's always better. In general, this is a drawing card, so you are adding 1 card from your hand and then setting up a 7 Warlords of the Sea for your leader. So that's also really good. So like I said with being able to manipulate the top of your deck so you can get Dofi's effect for free, just you don't have to guess that it's there, you know that it's there, is really effective. And then you also gain a card. You're not really losing anything. There's no real cost except for game knowledge from this card. So I think that's what makes it really good in my mind, is there's no real cost to it. The revealed card doesn't really matter, especially if you're able to abuse it. And the setup of putting a card back to your top of your deck gives you Dofi's effect. So any chance you get that way, I think is going to be a good thing. Moving on to our last card here, King Du, red character, 3 cost, 4K power, Whitebeard Pirates, 1K counter, blocker. Opponent's turn, when this character is KO'd by your opponent's effect, up to one of your leader gains 2000 power during this turn. I wish it said when this character is KO'd, and it wasn't just by effects, because then the blocker ability helps. So if you're attacking, this character blocks, it goes off the board, it doesn't matter. You got rid of a worse effect by not KOing it by effects. And if you're playing into this and you see this on your board, you just don't KO it by effects, and I think you're pretty happy. Because at some point they're going to want to block with it, and it being a known problem on board, being a blocker, I think is less effective for what it could do. If it said anytime it was KO'd, I think this would be an incredible card. It would probably be an SR because it just does too much. It just does a lot at that point. It blocks, it has an on-KO effect, but the wording could be different. That keyword phrase could be different. I think it would make it incredible. At this point, I think the previous red Whitebeard cards are probably better for this deck than this card, and you probably don't need it. I feel like there was very few blockers anyways. If I don't know, it's been a while. Memory doesn't serve me perfectly on that. So that's everything. Oh, it was a big release all at once, and we're going to probably be getting steady day by day cards for the next month and a half. And then also we have a whole nother booster pack that's going to be revealing stuff too. and I believe that's like the premium best like cards or whatever. So I think those are actually going to be reprints if the description in my head matches what's reality. But yeah, it was a big week for starter deck cards. I'm generally pretty excited for these starter decks, especially that they're revealing cards that are going to be actual reprints that are going to be important, like promos, and it's not an entire reprint like the Uda starter deck, which was kind of disappointing to pay for if you were only getting like 4 new cards. So I'm really excited to see that there's a lot of new cards coming, and that some of those are going to be promos so that people that didn't have access to those promos can get them. But with that being said, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up. If you want to get more One Piece TCG content, hit that subscribe. Until next time, peace.